Welcome into 10 Questions with NBC10 Boston. I'm Kwani Lunis. And for the month of February, as we do all year round, we're continuing to celebrate Black excellence. So joining me now is UConn women's basketball alum, three-time NCAA champion. The list goes on, honestly. We'll get into that. Ashley Battle, currently a scout for the Boston Celtics. Thank you for joining me today.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Of course. And I first want to start with those who don't know your story. We got to start where how you started how you got into basketball. What was your earliest memory?
Oh man, my earliest memory of basketball is, playing. So I grew up in Pittsburgh and we had a local court called the Field, but it was called Manchester Field. And, that's where a lot of the great basketball games were. I was really tall for my height. I was the only girl on an all boys fifth grade basketball team. And I would just go and play all the time, with guys who were bigger, stronger, faster, and they, treated me like, one of the guys. They didn't have no mercy. There was definitely no mercy. It was, if you're gonna be out here, you got to play. You got to learn how to play. So, that's probably one of my earliest memories. And then also playing with my family, my mom and my aunts. They all played, and fourth grade in the fifth grade, well, fourth, like third grade in the fourth grade, and that whole fourth grade year I was probably like the same height as my mom, and my mom's like 5'5", and so they used to just try to like bully ball me, all the time, like Charles Barkley bully balling me all the time, just backing me down, backing me down, backing me down, hook shot. And I was a kid, so I would complain like, this is not real basketball, like what
Right.
is this? And they would just say, well, beat me, can you beat me? And going into my fifth grade year, I shot up 4 more inches. I was about 5'9", 5'10", going into the fifth grade. And so I'm like, well, how about it now? Let's talk a little bit about this now. And I figured out how to beat them. And after that, they didn't want to play me anymore.
That makes sense. I mean, why would they want to? It's funny you mentioned being the only girl on your team growing up. I was on Google today, as usually I think most people's mornings start there. And the doodle that they had featured was of Tony Stone, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with her story, but she was actually one of the first few female athletes to play in the Negro Leagues at the time. From your experience, why would you say? Well, we know that usually that's because there aren't obviously enough opportunities for women to play their sport. But how would you say that helped you develop your game in addition to really being bullied and taught how to be stronger in the game?
I mean, it's just mental toughness. They crack jokes. They are, a lot bigger, a lot faster. So you have to get tougher sooner. And you have to develop your skills because you want to get picked and you want to play it. And they picked based off of talent. It didn't matter, if I was a female or a male. I mean, some of my best friends would be like, Ash was always one of the first ones to get picked, so they would say that to this day. If you ask them, they would still say, Ash was always getting picked first. So it was just one of those things where I was really athletic at and talented at a young age and was able to really hone those skills throughout the course of my life.
In in addition to the athletic ability, I think it's safe to say that education played a huge role in it, especially when it came to you really developing your game. I was reading up on a little more in your background and I saw that you had a hard time deciding your first private school that you ended up going to. What was the thought process behind deciding to go to Lindsay School and then eventually having to make that decision to go to UConn as well?
Oh, wow. I mean, it was like getting recruited in high school to go. Although Lindsley didn't recruit me,
Yeah.
but the city schools and the Catholic schools in the area was just like, hey, like, would you want to go to Oakland Catholic? Would you want to go to Shinley? Would you want to go to Perry? Would you want to go to Canavan? I mean, it was just like all these different schools that were, vying for my attention. And I played on a very successful AAU team, and we were all kind of going to different schools within the city, but ultimately we're like, it would be really cool if we could all go to school together. And at the time, my AAU coach was vying for the job at Canavan. So we were all thinking, like, if he got the job at Canavan, we're all going to go to Canavan, but ultimately he didn't get the job. And so we all kind of scattered throughout the city. And I had an opportunity to go to Lindsley going into the 7th grade. So that process is really like, okay, you go, you take the admissions test, and they kind of see what level you're at, reading comprehension, and they figure out, okay, well, she's eligible to be in the 7th grade. She's eligible to be in the 8th grade, from the standards that they have. And so the 7th grade, I went and took this test. I did very well. And the 7th grade is the earliest that they're able to take dorm students. So essentially, it was like going to college in the 7th grade. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to still be at home. I didn't want to leave my family. I didn't want to wear a uniform. I didn't want to be away. Going into the 8th grade, I went down, I take the admissions test. I'm just like, I don't know. And going into the 9th grade, of course, the same thing happens. I take the admissions test. I'm like, oh man, I don't know. And my mom goes to me, she goes, Ash, you don't like it, you can always come home. You're
Right.
not bound to stay there. Like, you can leave. And when she said that, a light bulb went off, and I was like, oh my goodness, you're right. Like, I can leave. Like, I don't have to stay. And I went down there, and I would say it was probably one of the best decisions that, I made, to go to boarding school, as the city was pretty bad at the time with a lot of violence and stuff like that. And then that process of going to UConn, again, I mentioned earlier that my AAU team was really, really good. We won. We were the number 1 team in the country as 12-year-olds. We came in 3rd place as like 13, 14, 15. I mean, we were very talented. And so I wasn't too concerned with like getting a scholarship, because I kind of figured I was going to get one. And Lindsley didn't have a good basketball program at the time. It was, people always think, oh, you went down there for basketball. I'm like, no, I didn't. They sucked. Like, it wasn't. I didn't
Brought me for basketball.
right. And so, the program started to get a little bit better while I was there. And I started getting recruited by a lot of different schools. I mean, I'd venture to say the only 2 schools I do not recall getting a letter from is Tennessee and North Carolina. Every other school in the country I received some form of information from. And I was set in stone going to Stanford. I was just like, I'm out of here, West Coast, here I come, like better weather, all this. And I'm just like, peace. So, obviously I didn't go to Stanford, and my last 3 schools were UConn, Penn State, and Duke. And, Penn State at the time, they were up and coming. They had some incoming freshmen that would have been my class that were really, really talented. Kelly Mazzanti, and then I'm really good friends with Tanisha Wright and Jessica Strom. Like, the 2 of us grew up together. And so I was like, man, that could be really interesting. And then Duke had incoming freshmen that were going to be really, really good coming in, with Elena Beard and Isis Tillis. And when you growing up in that lifestyle of AAU and camps and stuff like that, you meet all these people along the way. And Elena and I, unbeknownst to each other, like, people both call us AB. And we didn't know that at the time. And actually, there's a funny story of us playing against each other where she's at Duke, I'm at UConn, and everyone's like, AB, AB, AB. And we're both like looking like this. And then after the game, we're like, do they call you AB? And I'm like, do they call you AB? And we're like, yeah. I was like, oh my God, it was so confusing. But which it really was, because you turn and look and be like, you're not my teammate. Like, why are you
right? Like, why are you asking for help?
Right. Like, I'm not helping you. Like, stop. And so it was just really funny, after the game. But, ultimately, like, so I knew them going in, and then I grew up with Swin. We're both from Pittsburgh. Diana and I have been friends, from those different AAU circuits and playing and camps and stuff like that. Maria Conlon and I have been friends. And UConn ultimately was just a better fit for me. And I know that, like, they were coming off a national championship, and I know I'm also a very sore loser. And I've gotten a lot better. But back then I was like really, really, really bad. And so I knew this was going to be a place to challenge me. I ended up graduating with a double major in marketing and economics, along with, having a successful athletic career.
It's pretty obvious to the basketball eye why UConn women's basketball is such a great program. But being
Right.
an insider, what do you think makes it stand out the most?
For example, just the other day, UConn Tennessee played, and we had 10 alumni come back, from all different age groups. Some played prior to me, some played after me, and yet we're all friends. It's all intergenerational. And you have the support from your alumni who wants to be there and support the current team. But also, I think the coaching staff is also really great throughout the years where we've developed talent at a really high clip. Of course, we've gotten a lot of great talent throughout the years, but I think, the camaraderie and what it means to play at UConn, we all take that to heart, and we all want to win at the end of the day. And having, someone like Coach, aka Gino, who's been through the fire, who's, had such a ton of experience with him and Chris Daly, it's a no brainer why people want to go there.
And then fast forward 2005, you end up getting picked 25 overall. What was that
Yeah.
experience like for you?
I didn't know if that was gonna happen. I didn't know that was gonna happen at all. I mean, I was, one of these players that was labeled a defensive player who couldn't score, and I knew that that wasn't necessarily the case. Like sometimes when you go on teams, such as a team like UConn, you almost got to figure out like what role do you need to do in order to get playing time because there's so many talented players, but also is going to be best suited for your team. And we had, players the likes of Sue Bird and Diana Taurasi, Swin Cash, like those guys could score. They could score, and I had to figure out like, okay, well, not everybody wants to be the best defender out there. Like I can be that. I could still score. And so I ended up getting invited to the WNBA draft combine, and I don't think they have this now, but I wouldn't have gotten drafted without it. So it's similar to the NBA combine where you have, drills and you play games and this and the other. And so the first 2 days I was absolutely trash. I played horribly, horribly. And the very last day it was just playing pickup. And so I was like, okay, well, I don't really got anything to lose, and I played so well. It was just in my bag. I don't think I missed a shot. Every time I shot the ball, people were like, "Oh!" like screaming. It was like really insane,
Just shocked.
and people were calling Gina, and they're just like, "You won't believe what Ashley Battle's doing." He's like, "Yeah, dude, she does this every day in practice. Like I've seen this before. Like I know she's very capable of literally doing whatever she wants to do on the court whenever she wants to do it." So it was like this great time. And Jessica Moore, who's my best friend, she played at UConn with me, and we're at this draft combine together, and I could see her in the corner like biting her nails, and she's just like, oh my god, and it was just a really great experience. And afterwards, one of the coaches, actually Jenny Busek, who's coaching with Indiana, she was at Seattle at the time, and she came up to me and she goes, I think you just got yourself drafted. And sure enough, I ended up getting drafted to the team that she was coaching for in Seattle.
You brought up a really good point about when you were at UConn, figuring out how you fit into a roster full of talented other women. When you get drafted to the WNBA, and I'm sure even when you went to high school, how have you found a way to adapt each and every time, especially when when you get to WNBA, you're playing at the highest level?
Right. I mean, it's, in Seattle, it was one of those things where, the assistant coaches will come up to me and say, hey, Anne wants to see you rebound. So I would rebound. Anne wants to see you score. So I would score. And I would do these things, because I wanted to show that, I was a versatile player, but, I could literally do all these different things on the court. And I didn't, which almost trying to break the stereotype of like, hey, you're a defensive player who can't score, but I still ended up with over 1,000 points at UConn. Like I could put the ball in the bucket. And so, although, sometimes when you're doing these things, it's ultimately not enough. Like sometimes it comes down to money, sometimes it comes down to fit. And, I was actually released from that team in Seattle that I was drafted to. So I had to figure out like, hey, do I still want to do this? Do I like what's my mental like? Do I want to continue to play, or do I want to just get a job? Because at the time I had already interned at Nike. I was really close with the person that I interned with, and she wanted to bring me on board. So I had some options there. But I needed to prove to myself because I knew I was talented enough to play in the WNBA. So I went overseas and I got better, and I ended up having a tryout in New York where, the rest is history, and that's where I spent the bulk of my career.
Basketball has clearly been following you for your entire life at this point, and now
Yep.
you are a scout for the Boston Celtics. How did that role come about for you?
A lot of it is just being in the right place at the right time, and a lot of networking and reaching out to people, and opportunity at the same time. So it's like one of those things where it's fit. I interviewed, I talked about the things that I thought the team needed. I talked about things that I thought that I would want, and it was just a really good fit. And I'm very fortunate that to come to an organization like the Celtics, a historic organization where things are run the right way, and I have like really great people around me. So it's a really awesome job to come into and to really grow from.
For those who don't really understand the scouting role, without giving away too many secrets,
Right,
what
because
does
it is
your
trade deadline.
exactly? This was actually a setup for you to release
I
the
know you're trying to get all the goods out of me.
But what is your day to day like? And especially now that we are approaching the NBA deadline, how does your role look?
So still every day I try to watch at least 2 games throughout the day, and I try to knock them out pretty early. And we have different apps that we could go to where it cuts the commercials out, and you're able to kind of watch things. Or if you just wanted to watch clips on guys, you could do that as well. And then it's a lot of phone calls, calling teams, talking to teams, agents, all types of stuff. And as we're approaching the trade deadline, we have a lot of meetings and discussing, what we see fit for the future of the team.
That makes sense. It's pretty self explanatory. From
Self-explanatory. I
your
don't have to give you anything for that.
right. From your experience now, obviously having played in the WNBA and now working for an NBA team, money aside, because that's one of the biggest factors in
Right.
marketing, what would you say is the biggest difference between the two leagues?
The WNBA is obviously, below the rim. There's a lot more passing, cutting, and playing the game like that. And in the NBA, it's a little bit more. No, they're actually both really physical, and you play above the rim. But ultimately, basketball is basketball. If you see things, flashing and how you position yourself, a lot of the things are the same. A lot of the footwork is the same. A lot of the rules are the same. Really, it's just a matter of, you know, people knowing how to play basketball and people not knowing how to play basketball. I think a lot of the buzz when you see people are like, oh, I never watched the WNBA. And I challenge them really, like, go to a game. Go to a game and go see some people play. You'll probably be surprised at how good the teams are and how good the games actually are. And and your favorite player loves WNBA players and WNBA games. So they're not just watching it because just to watch it. They watch because they're actually learning something, and it's great basketball.
Why do you think it's taking so long? And there's still a lot of progress to go, but
For
for
sure.
people to start to appreciate the women's game.
I think it's just ignorance. It's just ignorance, and people, they're set in their ways and what they want to watch, and that's fine. I think as the women's game grow, the audience will continue to grow. And I think we also need a little bit more support from different networks as well, because when I played, it's kind of crazy how this cycle have gone. So when the WNBA started, there was a lot of media attention, and Lisa Leslie and Teresa Witherspoon, and there's a lot of hype that you would see WNBA players in different commercials and TV programming and all those different things. And then it kind of took a little dip. But when I was in college, if UConn lost, it was the number one story on SportsCenter. For a week, I couldn't watch SportsCenter for a week because they would just be talking, oh, UConn lost. Like that would lead the stories all the time. So it's kind of, odd how we've gone from, a lot of media support to right now. I mean, it's kind of trying to uptick right now, but for a long time there was a low where there was like no media support. And in order to grow the game, you need the media. The NBA has a lot has grown significantly because of TV contracts and how they've been able to expand and expand the salary caps and expand the salaries. And a lot of it has come from, the revenue that is gained from television contracts.
And the biggest conversation I think between the two sports always has to do with revenue overall. You mentioned during your time at UConn, you were on Sports Center, these big networks on a regular basis. And now we're seeing, again, a different kind of growth where a fellow UConn Husky, Paige Beckers, is now, she just signed her second NIL deal with Cash App, but she was able to put her teammates on with her stock X
I know,
deal.
I just saw that. That was awesome.
What
That
do you
was
think
awesome.
about NIL overall?
I love it. I love it. Ultimately there's a lot of different things that come with, NIL, like I just hope that the players don't feel the pressure to, I have to do well, I have to be like this, I have to be this type of person because they signed an NIL deal. Go out there and play your game, be true to who you are, and the rest will take care of itself. Don't try to be different than who you are. And I saw that Page, gifted everybody stuff from StockX, and I was like, this is amazing, and this is what it's about. Like, it's great to have, it's great for Paige to be able to be talented enough to get a huge NIL deal like that, but it's also just so giving to see, like, hey, if I'm eating, my team's eating too. And I just love to see that, and I hope to see more of that in the future.
And I can imagine for you as a player, do you wish that it existed? It's kind of a
Oh, heck yeah. I mean, like, I was on these teams, I mean, especially, like, when I played, like, again, like, we were getting a lot of media attention, selling out everywhere we went, 3 national championships in a row. We broke John Wooden's record of, like, 88 consecutive games, win streak. I mean, we had a lot of media attention. And so I'm sure if social media was as popular as it was, as it is now back then, we would all probably had 50 plus thousand, followers and NIA deals. And, I mean, but the series alone, just between UConn and Tennessee, was, at the time when we played those games, were must see TV and highly, most rated television sports games, like, of ever, like, every time we break a record. So it wasn't, so of course, yeah, I would have loved to have an NIA deal. Like, I mean, Diana, just imagine, like, Diana with an NIL deal, like Sue, like, I mean, it was just, we had so many players that would have, totally benefited for that, when I played, and even, like, the likes of me, because, I have I'd like to think I have pretty cool personality, and so it would have worked really well for different sponsors.
I know one person in the basketball world that you were close to and has had a big impact on women's sports was Kobe Bryant. How would you say he impacted not only your game, but just the sphere of women's sports overall?
I mean, Kobe was, all about women's sports and women's basketball. I mean, the last time, yeah, I guess it would have been the last time I saw him. He was at the NBA league office, meeting with the commissioner of the WNBA to see what he could do to improve the game, what he could do to help the league, what he can do. And I think that's, one of the things that, now that he has passed, people have been talking about, like, how generous he was and how much he was always trying to help other people and be there for other people. And, he would, take players in and teach them different footwork techniques, how to, shoot, where to create space, all these little minor things, minor details that he's figured out by playing. He was able to pass that on and instill it in other players. And, and it's a huge loss for women's basketball, but I'm sure we will always keep his memory alive, and Gigi's memory alive, because she was really good. She was really, really good. And I, fortunate to have been able to play, and play with them in practice, and to see how talented that team was. I mean, they were really good. I mean, and I was just like, I can't believe this. Like, they're doing moves that you don't even learn, and some people don't even learn until they become pro. Like the little shimmy, shimmy, turnaround jump shots. Like, they were learning that in the 7th grade, and they were good at it. Feel the defense. Where'd he go? Like, they had such great feel for the game at such a young age that, like, it's, it's just, I feel like we were all robbed to see, how well these girls would have been, how well they would have played, and robbed of seeing, the relationship grow, and his relationship with women's basketball grow.
Absolutely. On a lighter note, we've talked about basketball for most of this interview, but most people like to think of themselves as pretty well rounded. So, what is one skill that you have that people would be shocked about?
A skill that I have that people would be shocked about. I think I have a couple of them.
Okay.
Okay.
Don't hurt us now.
Yeah, I think I have a couple of them. I like to play the guitar.
Hmm.
Although my guitar teacher would probably be upset with me because I haven't been practicing. So I need to really pick the guitar up. I like to draw.
Okay.
Where I'm not too. I mean, I've had some things. I'm not too bad, but that could be better. Um, and I'm probably like a really good movie critic.
Okay. That's
Yeah,
that's
it's so
fair.
random. It's so random, but I love going to the movies, and a really good friend of mine, he and I, we could talk movies literally all day, and even with my teammates, we all like are movie buffs, and recite movie lines. I think with two of my teammates, Sue Bird and Maria Conlon, we could probably have a conversation that's like all movie quotes, like and Jessica Moore, actually, for that matter. Like the four of us could probably sit down and have a conversation where we just talk in movie quotes.
What are the top movies that get quoted on a regular? Or is it
I
just
mean,
everything?
it could be anything. It can literally be anything from like Dirty Dancing to, I mean, it could be Marvel. I mean, it could literally be anything. And like for the most part, we'll be like, oh, I haven't seen that movie in a long time. Like, you know what I mean? Like we'll pick
You
up
just
like
know what
what
the
movie.
quote is.
Yeah.
That is impressive because I watch a movie and immediately forget everything that happens sometimes. So I'm
No,
really impressed by that skill set.
we have a brain like an elephant when it comes to movies.
Movies specifically.
Yeah.
No, that's pretty cool. So, as I mentioned at the beginning, we are celebrating Black excellence overall, not just for Black History Month. So, for you, what does Black excellence mean overall?
Man, Black excellence is just really taking things to another level. I think, as a culture, we've always had to work harder and be twice as smarter than our counterparts. And I think, today you see a lot of people who are in industries that you've never seen people of color in, and we're able to succeed and do really well. And I think it's showing the next generation and the younger generation after that hey, you have the ability to move on, to push on, and to be even better and greater than we are, and to keep it going for the future generation, so we can create an equality that our forefathers have talked about. And I am totally here to support that. I'm totally here to help others, and I'm hopefully I'm doing my part into trying to pave the way and push forward for other people.
Ashley, you've already done so much to begin with, but I'm with you. I'm looking forward to the rest of your successes, whether it's in basketball or beyond.
Thank you so much. It's gonna be fun. I'm excited.
Thank you for joining 10 Questions with NBC10 Boston.
That was like 12 questions.